Okay, we're now ready to begin installing the lights. Our next step is to begin drilling out the holes for the LEDs. For each light I'll drill 2 holes. These are going to be 3mm LEDs in here, so I'll drill one up above and one below. The upper one will be our tail brake light and the lower one will be our strobes. They'll alternate, the strobes will alternate. So I'm going to drill my hole, kind of pick my positions, drill the hole very carefully. You want to press firmly but not too hard. You don't want to over drill the hole. It's always better to drill the hole a little bit smaller, do a test fit, and if it's too small, make it a little bit bigger. And you also want to make sure that you do a little bit of drilling from both sides to get rid of any burrs. If you can see, these little burrs in here are bad. They will prevent the clip from clipping in properly, so make sure those are cleaned out. And again, once this is cleaned out, you can come back if you need to from the outside in, but you want to just make sure these holes, these little bezels pop in there pretty easily. If they're too hard to press in, then the LEDs are too hard to insert. If they're too loose, it's okay. You can use the zap glue at the end to reinforce them and really hold them in place. But the ideal scenario is when it pops in, it should just hold itself in place. It shouldn't come back out like this. So this hole needs to be just a tiny bit larger. And let me check the upper one as well. Okay, that went in really nicely. It just popped right in there, and I can feel that when the LED is coming in from the back side, it will squeeze the little tabs out and it'll hold it in place. And this one actually went in really nicely too. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I'll make a note here of where I drilled my hole to try and get the centers in as close to the same position as I can, just to make it look as even as possible. That looks pretty good. Again, I'm in here cleaning up these burrs. Okay, let's go ahead and do a test fit. Still a little bit too tight on that one. And I can see this one is in the same boat. So let's go ahead and open these up just a smidgen. You don't want to take too much off. Just be real easy with it. Take just a little bit of time. A little bit of patience here will pay off. Okay, that one snapped in nicely. I think this one's still a little bit too tight. Yeah. Literally, just like one turn or 2 turns can make a big difference. There it is. So these 4 are now good, ready to go. Let's start on the front ones. So with the front ones, we have 2 large headlights. So these are going to be 5mm holes, and then we'll have 2 smaller strobe lights that we'll put into the more centered into the grill, and those will also be 3mm LEDs. I'm going to position these headlights as far forward as I can, because what's going to happen is the LED is going to point off of whatever surface it's coming out of. So if the surface is pointing that way, the LED will be pointing that way. As much as possible, I want to try and bring it around to the front. That'll give the best visibility to your vehicle when it's further away down the road. Okay, so I'm going to pick it right here. Again, these 2 holes are going to be a little bit larger. Go ahead and pick my position and drill this one as well. On some of these bodies, you do want to be careful to not push too hard on it when you're getting started, sometimes the material can get thin and it'll just punch right through. If that does happen to you, you're going to use at the end the zap goo or shoe goo to reinforce it. You'll want to trim it out as close to round as you can with your scissors, and then once the LED and bezel are popped in there, you can apply a liberal amount of shoe goo to hold it. See, these need to be a tiny bit larger, and I think we're ready now to do a test fit. No, this is still too small. Okay, a little bit bigger. Okay, that one fit in pretty nicely. That's a good one. Kind of popped right in, and I can feel that the LED will spread out the legs and hold it in place. This one may be still a little too tight. Yeah, that one's just a tiny bit too tight. Even though it went in kind of snugly, and I can feel the two legs are being pressed together. You don't want that. If it's too tight, the LED will go in. It'll be hard to insert the LED, and it won't hold the body correctly. Just a little bit bigger. Okay, that one went in nicely. Now the LED should just pop right into place. We'll do the last two in the front of the grill here for the front strobes. Test this 3mm. Oh, that popped in pretty nicely. And so did that one. Okay, so all of our bezels are ready to have LEDs inserted into them. Let's start out with our two headlights. When you insert these in, they should just pop right into place. So you kind of insert it right between these two tall tabs. And if the LED is too hard to press in, then this one is actually right on the border. It could have been a little bit looser. It went in okay. I heard it snap into place. I think it's okay. Let's check this one. Yeah, I can feel this one's a lot looser. Okay, that's perfect, but it's held snugly in place. And when we're done with all the rest of the LEDs, we'll come back and put some shoe goo or zap goo on there. Alright, let's put in some front strobes. Also, when you're inserting the LEDs, try and orient it so that the two wires are sitting between the two tabs. So there's two tabs here, and the two wires should be kind of opposing to them. If you can see right here, that's the ideal way. Okay. This one is a little bit too tight. I'm going to back this out, open up that hole just a tiny bit more. Literally, that's probably all the difference that it needs. That went in really easy. And there you go. Now it's snugly in place. Pop in the two rear ones, or actually the four rear ones. If you find that these two tabs are kind of too close together and it's hard to squeeze the LED in, that's your indicator to tell you that your LEDs, your hole is too small. You need to open it up just a tiny bit. Okay, they should snap right in just like that. Our next step is to install our UF7 controller into the body of our truck. The important thing to make note right now is, because we're going to tap power off of the radio and therefore through the car's battery, we want to make sure we have the maximum service loop. The power cable is only so long, so the location that you put the controller in your vehicle, you're probably going to want to move it towards the side that your controller is on. In the case of, this is a /2 wheel drive, in the case of a /4 wheel drive, the radio is on this side, so you'd actually want to kind of look at it like this and put the controller on this side. So for this vehicle though, we're going to have it this way, and we'll keep it towards the driver's side. So we'll go ahead and attach this by removing the sticky double-backed tape here, and make sure that you give yourself space. We're going to put a light bar up here. You don't want to put the controller right where the screws and the wires are going to come through for the light bar. So we're going to shift it over a little bit. In fact, let me think about this a little bit more. We've got some ridges in the top of the truck body, which is okay. This foam is pretty compliant. It'll kind of conform to whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and place it right here like this. Give it a good pressing down, and there it is. Now it's very securely mounted. You'll notice that on the UF7 controller there's two little tabs. These are there in case you want to use screws to hold down in your particular application. If you're tight on space, these can be easily twisted and broken off. Whatever your need is. In this case it doesn't really matter, so we'll just leave them in place. Now that we have our controller installed, our next task is to attach the LEDs into the correct plugs or connectors on the controller. If you look at the UF7 manual, you'll find that there are several different modes that the controller can operate in. In this case we want mode number 4. That's going to give us strobes, corner strobe lights, which are basically emergency strobes. They can be used for police cars or fire engines or other emergency vehicles. It'll give us 2 headlights and then 2 tail brake lights. And this little chart right here shows you which LEDs go into which connectors for this mode configuration. So, according to this, our 2 brake lights are going to be plugged into port B. Our 2 headlights will get plugged into port E, and then for the strobes, the way they work is that they alternate in opposite corners. So these 2 blink and then these 2 blink. So what we'll do is we'll plug 2 into here and 2 into here. So these will blink and then these will blink. So we'll go our diagonal way. So our rear one will be here, one of the rear ones will be here, the other rear one will be down here, and same thing for the front. One up here and one down there. Alright, so let's do that next. We had said that we wanted our tail and brake lights to be the upper LEDs, so I'll go ahead and plug those 2 into port B. Alright, and now we have our 2 strobes, so I'll plug one of them into port A and the other one into port D. So they're going to alternate. It'll be blink blink, blink blink, blink blink, blink blink. Next we'll attach our headlights, and those get plugged into port E. And go ahead and attach these strobes. I want the opposite corners to flash in unison. So this one is plugged into port A, so I'll plug this one and also into port A, and therefore this one goes into port D. This is how it looks. You'll notice that there's a couple extra ports right here, or there's actually a total of 4 connectors that are not currently being used. Those are also strobes in this mode, so you can add up to 4 more LEDs. Really good for in the case of like a fire truck where you have actually 2 strobes in each corner, or other emergency vehicles. You can also add them, one thing we're going to do is we're going to add 2 more orange LEDs onto the roof, pointing backwards through the window. So we'll use 2 alternating of these other connectors. These LEDs we're going to mount in, but we're not going to use these bezels. We're actually going to use zip ties to hold them up high and pointing directly out the window. Actually, let's go ahead and place our 2 zip ties. We'll put these towards the middle. One other note on this controller, you'll notice this little dangling connector, this little pigtail. This pigtail is going to be used to power the light bar up on top. Alright, we need a couple zip ties, and we'll go ahead and attach these orange or amber LEDs. Okay, that's one. And here is the second one. So our 2 amber LEDs are held in place as shown. We'll go ahead and connect these to 2 of these open ports, one on each, so that they alternate in their strobing. Okay, everything is connected. The next step is to attach the power cable, and then we'll go ahead and test the system. To attach the power cable, we're going to use a 2mm socket to access our radio. Alright. What we want to do is, there's 2 cables that are servo cables coming out of our radio. One of them goes to the steering servo, and one of them goes to the motor servo. We want to kind of follow the motor servo back in here and see where it's plugged into. And it looks like it's plugged into channel number 2. Yeah, looks like it's plugged into channel number 2. We want to be absolutely sure about that, and okay, yeah, it's definitely channel number 2. We're going to take our Y-splitter cable, we're going to feed it through here exactly where this cable is. We're going to unplug this cable, feed it back, and then connect it into this end of the Y-splitter, and this end will plug exactly where this one came out of. The same orientation and the same location. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to tap power for our controller off of this channel, but also we're going to read the signal to the motor to see when the vehicle is braking. That'll give us our brake light functionality. Alright, so noting for sure which channel this is coming out of, I'll go ahead and feed this cable back through. And feed this one in. Plug it in the same way in the same location. So you can kind of see how that looks. And then this cable that I took out, I'll go ahead and plug into our Y connector, making sure that the black cables are both on the same side and the white cables are both on the same side. With that, I can now plug this end into our controller and test it out. Now you'll notice that there's two connectors on here. You want to plug this cable into connector 1. That's the motor, and there's a little detail, a little logo on here that tells you which connector is for which. And the orientation is also important. If you plug it in backwards, it won't hurt the lighting controller, it just won't work properly. The correct way to connect it is as it is shown here. Okay, let's get a battery and test it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply power. And we'll turn it on. Keep an eye on the controller. There's a light here on the controller that should blink one time very briefly, and then the light on our controller should also turn on. Okay, there was one small blink right here, but then nothing else happened. The controller is on, but nothing happened here. And the reason is this is set to mode 0. Mode 0 is off. So if I press this little button right here, you'll see the little light blink, and the light will blink to indicate which mode it is. So mode 1, it'll blink one time and stay on steady. And you'll notice all of the lights turned on steady. Okay, now let's press it again. We'll go to mode 2. Blink twice. The lights are still on steady. Mode 3. We now have a strobe. You can see there. In mode 4, we'll add the headlights and the tail brake lights. On the front, it looks like this. You can see the headlights. On the back, looks like this. So we've got the tail brake lights above and the strobes below. Then we also have our window flashers. You can actually, these need a little bit more adjustment to shine through the window, but you can kind of see them in here. Now that everything checks out okay, let's disconnect the power, and our next step will be to clean up the cabling so it isn't dangling and getting in the way of everything. We'll take several of our zip ties and bundle things together and feed them around to here. Again, making sure that we leave space to add a light bar in just a little bit. You'll notice that I fed the wires through one side. I'll do that in both cases. It's generally nicer to have the LEDs flow in one direction, kind of related to the position of the controller. Also, you want to make sure that the LEDs have enough slack where they come out like at a straight angle and they're not really too stressed. Like I said, we're going to add some shoe glue in here to strengthen this up, or zap glue actually. But in any case, we want to try and limit the LED's movement as much as we can. We want to hold it in place. If they're going to break anywhere, they're most likely to break right at the junction where the wires come into the LED, and that happens from continual stress of bending over time. This is how I've chosen to dress out these cables. I did this kind of quickly. You can spend a little bit more time if you want to be a little more meticulous about it. But the next step is to go ahead and cut off all the ends of the zip ties. Okay, so this is how it's looking with it all dressed out. I'll take a little zap glue and position these, glue these down so they're a little bit more tidy and out of the way. With that, our next step is to install the light bar.